What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to another tutorial. Last week we were able to um, import external scripts and apply them to game objects in our scene. Well, I kind of forgot to add something at the very end, and that was to make it dynamic and not static, because I had it set to play.java, and I kind of wanted it to be dynamic and completely forgot at the end. So what that's going to look like is in your editor util, you will see where it says path source path equals path.get temp property, and then it'll say play.java right there. You just want to replace that with these two lines right here. And then down here in the try catch for my class, yours will say my class equals class loader dot load class, and then it'll say play. Yeah, it'll say like play, I think. Well, you want to replace that with this line right here, and that allow after those changes, you can add whatever scripts you want with whatever names you want. You don't have to worry about all that crap. So then now it is dynamic. Or not. It always sets it to path.class. I did not realize that before this video. Wow. Awesome. Okay. So I wish I would have known that. So then let's copy this right here for load class and remove that and paste that in there and add a plus sign. There we go. So we will have to replace that as well. Awesome. I am actually super glad I saw that before. Okay, so now it is correct. Awesome. Okay. That would have sucked in the future coming across that. So another thing we need to do is in the core class, down in the cleanups at the very bottom, just add editor util.cleanup, and that'll call the cleanup methods that we need. I don't believe I need editor util for this episode. All right, so I recorded this episode 3 times now, and have just completely screwed them up every single time, and it's because I kept on running into small little issues. And it really isn't what I was doing that was causing the issue. I mean, it was, but it was because I had a different plan for how I was going to do this before, and now I know a better way of doing it, just over time, just thinking about how everything is going to fit together. So I was trying to implement some of the older stuff with the newer stuff, and it wasn't working correctly. So what I did was I went ahead and did the whole thing so it completely works. And what this is it is, well, I kind of forgot to mention what this episode is about, but it's about importing external assets from our project or external project folder. So it's all done. So this episode is going to be a little bit different because it's already all done, and I'm just going to explain what I changed, where I changed it, kind of explain what does what. And that's because I just recorded it so many times I just said screw it, There's no point in wasting a bunch of time me solving whatever in the crap is going on. All right, so we will start this off in the asset database. So in here, there was just a couple things I needed to change. Well, add. Right here, I just basically copy and pasted this, put it down here, and changed it from import from local directory to import from external directory. And instead of saying textures equals, I just added textures.addAll. So what addAll does is it adds two lists together. So it's just an easy way of doing that. Since we're doing it from local and external, we can just add those two lists together and combine it and then loop it that way. Let's see here. And on, did I have to change that? Oh no, I didn't. Okay. So that was all for this method, changes in this method. But down here in the import from local directory, what I did was I added this right here. So whenever it does the pass, or when it adds to the paths, I put that little thing right there. And then this little thing right here. So it's throwing in a forward slash. And the reason for that is so that we can determine whether or not it's a local directory or a local path, or if it's an external path whenever we're creating a new instance of some other class, because we don't know if it's internal or external from all these classes. So we have to tell it that it is. And my first initial thought was to add like a Boolean or whatever to like the creating a texture. Say right here, say is external or whatever. But I was like, I don't want to add extra methods, or I don't want to add extra variables for that in there. So what I did was I just added this, and all it's going to do is it's going to check if it starts with, or check to see if the name starts with a forward slash. And if it does, then it's an internal directory. If it does not, then it is an external directory. So I didn't have to change anything over here, nothing at all. It's just this right here, just adding that forward slash to any local directory name. And I believe that was it for asset database. So once you do that, it's going to have that forward slash in the name. So you are now going to get, like if you try to run it right now, you're going to get errors because that forward slash is now wrong in all this, or in all of these right here. So now we have to actually go in and change that. So I started off with texture, and there really isn't too many massive changes in how these classes are going to look. They're almost identical. And I actually, if you did the same thing I did and commented out the old code whenever we started messing around with jar files and stuff like that, this line right here which all of these are going to have something similar, something commented out from our old code. That's what this line is right here. So, let's see here. This was not here before. So this right here is basically what our old code looked like without this if statement and this replacement and else and whatnot. It basically just looked like this. And we actually just set the name to equal file name before. Well, we don't want that because there's a slash or it's a full path, so we have to change that. So basically from what IDE equals GLGen textures to below this line right here will look like this. And that's basically how every single one of these scripts are going to look. All it is we're taking the byte buffer for this texture. We're checking if it has a forward slash. So if it has a forward slash, then it is a local file. So it's not a full directory path. So we just set the name to equal the file name without the first slash. And then we just do our normal stuff that we've been doing. Else, or if it is an external file, then we get a split name. So we basically split the file name by the backslashes. And then right here, we grab the name, which is the very last element in this split array. And then we create just a standard STBI load instead of STBI load from memory, like how we did at the very early stages of this series. And that's all that is. Now, some of these are going to be a little bit different because I had to put the name down here, like at the bottom, instead of above everything else. So you'll see here in just a minute. But as long as your code looks like this, your textures will be fine. So now off to shaders. So before we had this code right here. These two lines of code is basically what was right here, and that's it. So when you go in there, you'll see what name or whatever was in. I think we were setting the name up here somewhere where it just says name equals file name. Well, we want to remove that because we don't want the name to be file name because, well, it has a slash in it and it could be a full directory name. So right here, basically above while line equals br.readline, or actually above string line, and from the beginning of the try catch, your code will look like this. Now, keep in mind, before like whenever we were just doing textures, there was a slash right here. And if you look at your code, which is this right here, there is a slash right here, and you're going to have to remove that. Because like I said, I put the name on the bottom. And that's because we're using name and then this dot name. Or no, it's because file, or I have file name in here. So it's actually just taking the full name that we're passing in. So just make sure that it looks like this, and it will be good. And as you can tell, it looks almost identical to what texture look like. And like I said, all these scripts are gonna look almost identical. It's because we're doing the same thing just in all these different scripts. All right, now with font. What is it? Before we had, in this try-catch, I guess I would say, before we had this, without this line of code. So it was this. Well, we need to place it inside of this if bracket. So if name dot starts with backslash, or forward slash, of course, they were going to try catch it. And like I said before, remove this backslash, or forward slash, sorry. And I believe we're setting the name somewhere in here. Yes, right here. Well, we're going to keep this the same, because what we're going to do is we're going to change this name variable, and then it's going to set this dot name to equal that variable. So you can keep this dot name down here at the bottom. So then else we're going to try catch it just like we did up here. And we're going to use, for the file name, it'll just be name plus .ttf, because whenever we pass it in, it's a full file path, but it does not have the extension onto the end of it, so we have to add the extension onto the end of it. So as long as it looks like this, you are good to go. And again, on GUI skin, the same like we were doing before. Take wherever it says name equals and just remove it. And before we had this code right here that has the forward slash, which you need to remove, and place it inside of here just like the other ones. So this is the new code to replace these two lines of code. And nothing new exactly like before. Let's just go ahead and do material because it keeps on taking me over there anyways. So this looks basically identical to what you saw just a second ago. Same thing with this. They're literally exactly the same. Sprites.name. Actually, I did not remove this. So that's good to know. Let's see if I made any other mistake. Name dot sprite, this dot name equals split, replace first. Okay, that should be correct. Because what I did was I went into my project and I removed some of these things out of the resources folder. That way I could test them out. So I put default game material in the material in my project. There's nothing new on there. And there, default game shader for shader. But two things that I did not add was a sprite and a skin, which I probably should do that. Let's see here. Resources, sprites, test sprite. Yeah, that doesn't even belong in there. So let's just take that and put it in sprites. Yes. There we go. So then that sprite's in there. Skin, I don't have a game skin, so we'll just leave that blank. Okay. So just make sure that code is like that. Make sure that material is like that. And that is it. Whenever we run this, it should be good. It's the only thing I changed was that backslash on the sprite. I didn't have a sprite in there earlier, so I did not test that, so I can test it now. All right, there we go. So textures came in good. The sprites came from the project folder. Skins came from the resources folder. Default game shader. So the game shader is from the project folder. Default shader is from the resources folder. So local external. Same thing. Local external. And this is external, internal, and procedural. All right, so everything is working just like it should. So since we're only like what, 22 minutes in, I know this is going to take you a lot longer to type up, but by the time you get to this point, like I said before, we will make everything that is internal, basically anything that's in this resources folder, or it's inside of the resources folder inside of the jar file, like whenever we run this as a jar file, we don't want all these internals to show up. Like anything internal, we don't want it to show up in here. Obviously, we only want stuff that is external. So like bootload, there's no sense in even showing the bootload image. So I have not added any of the code for this because this is just something I'm doing since we have a little bit of time. In the project panel, so in the project panel, if we wanted to, if we did not want to display like internal stuff, we could say right here, if values I dot name dot equals, let's see here, Actually, no, we cannot do that. So, yeah, we will have to actually create a thing for that. I thought that was going to be something super simple to do to kind of cover the time, but it looks like I am not going to be able to add this right now because right here it's just drawing the button for the selected type, and right here it's just showing the values name in it. Nothing is separated by data type. So we'll have to find another way around that. But right now it's completely fine. It's just going to show internal assets plus external assets, which is whatever. Yeah, so that is it for this episode. I have no idea what I'm going to do for the next episode. I've just been working, trying to get everything done around the house, did some yard stuff. I did say that I was going to start, or was thinking about starting a new series on top of this series, or adding more episodes to this series, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some more of these editor tutorials so that we can get further along in the editor, and after a few more episodes so that it's more usable and more user friendly, I'm going to start a series on making a game using this engine. And I will probably do that by making a like Vegas style 5-reel slot machine. Something that you would see in electronic gambling systems or inside of a casino or whatever. I've done hundreds of slot machines in the past, and there's not a whole lot we have to do. We can almost do it how the engine is right now and just be perfectly fine with everything. Everything would work 100%. But there's a few things I want to do inside of the editor before I start that series. So I thought it would be a good style of game to start with and make a series on using it. But I will see you in the next episode where we will do I have no idea what. So have a good week, and I will see you next time.